I never felt like I deserved to go to Jerusalem. It's a city that, in my imagination, oozes religiosity. Only those who said, "next year in Jerusalem," and meant it, ought to go. Or perhaps anyone with deep ancestral roots in the area, ranging from the various groups of Arabs and Jews who've seen the likes of the Ottomans, Brits, and Jordanians come and go. In general, I'm talking about people for whom Jerusalem means something more than a place to grab some humble brag shots for social media. Not some American schmendrick who's about as pious as a village idiot from Chelm. Although I forced myself to the sights like the Wailing Wall with the Dome of the Rock glistening in the background, I can't say it sparked a spiritual revolution within. Honestly, I felt a little guilty. This is something many of my ancestors would have been incredibly moved to see for themselves. As far as I know, I'm the first in my line to have seen this place in presumably thousands of years. Yet there I was, feeling like I stole some teenage girl's front row seats to a Billie Eilish concert. But what did light up my soul, as much as there is one, was eating in Jerusalem. Joel Haber shows us the way.
My name is Joel Haber. I grew up in New Jersey, lived in New York, lived in LA. I've been living here in Jerusalem for the last 14 plus years. Best decision I ever made. It was a very quick move, and I have no regrets about it. Honestly, without exaggeration, my life is better in every way, including financially, which surprises some people. Not because I'm so rich here, but because I never made money in America. Really, my life is better in every way. Not perfect, of course. It can always be better, but yeah, it was a great decision.
That's easy to say when you live steps away from Jerusalem's Machane Yehuda market. It's something of a mecca of Jewish food, if I can mix metaphors. Joel explains.
We have a term in Israel called kibbutz galuyot. That means the ingathering of the exiles. Jews are the most globalized nation on earth. We have literally spread everywhere in the world. There's been some Jewish history everywhere. And after the establishment of the state, and also in the lead up to it, Jews from all over the world have been moving back to Israel. And when you move from one country to another, you miss the food you had and you keep cooking it. And so all of those different communities have brought their foods with them here, and some more than others, typically based on numbers of, are there only a small number or a lot? But if it's a bigger community, those foods get absorbed into the overall Israeli cuisine. So not the only element of Israeli cuisine. There are others, such as what's available produce-wise, such as the fact that we're on the seam of two regions. We're both a Middle Eastern cuisine and a Mediterranean cuisine. Some of our foods we have in common with Iraq, and others we have in common with Spain. Okay, so we're that mixture. But one of the main things is the fingerprints of all of those Jews from all over the world that have brought their foods here. And so Israeli cuisine, not exclusively, but by and large, is the cuisine of the Jews. Jewish foods from all over the world transplanted to here.
That's not to say it's all about food. Our first stop lands us here at the Beer Bazaar. Joel gives us the rundown on Israeli beer.
So, the history of Israeli beer in a minute and a half, okay, or maybe even less. So, first Israeli beer is Nesher beer, eagle beer. Most Israelis don't even know that they make a real beer. They just know the non-alcoholic stuff you can buy for your kids in the supermarket. They make a real beer and it's drinkable.
Okay.
Then you had Gold Star and Maccabi. In my opinion, Gold Star is drinkable, acceptable, and Maccabi is terrible.
Okay.
And then you had Tuborg and Carlsberg, which are both Danish beers, but they opened a local brewery in Ashkelon. So those are also domestic beers. That was it, 5 beers. 15 years ago, maybe 16 now, an American named Dave Cohen opened the Dancing Camel Brewery in Tel Aviv. First microbrewery in the country, and that opened the floodgates. Now we've got like 100 different microbreweries. Many of them are contracting, so it's depending on how you're defining it, but lots of different craft beers, and really pushing the envelope, doing really interesting stuff, especially with flavorings. Looking at the beer industry in Israel today is like looking at the wine industry 35 years ago.
Yeah.
There used to be 5 wineries,
Right.
till the Golan Heights winery broke the monopoly.
Yeah.
Now, 35 or so years later, we have around 350 wineries in this country.
Wow.
So I hope in another 20 years we have 350 breweries.
Like any market worth its salt, the produce is seasonal with an emphasis on keeping things local. Not only does it taste better,
You don't kill the environment transporting it half around the world, but when it's not in season, you can't get it.
Right.
And then when it comes back into season, you get excited and you forget what it was, you know? Like in America, you get everything all year round, you know?
but what you don't get is a sabra, which is
You know what's really interesting about the sabra? So this is a fruit that grows on a cactus. And it's also the term that we use to describe a native-born Israeli, right? Cacti are all indigenous to the Western Hemisphere. So we're describing a native-born Israeli with an import. But it's an import that was imported a really long time ago. And so in the same way, although there's always been Jews living in this land, I mean, always since over 2,000 years ago until now, the majority of native-born Israelis, if you go back 2 generations, 5 generations, 10 generations, their ancestors were immigrants, just like the Sabra was.
And it's those Sabras to be who opened up food stands and bakeries that embrace Jewish culinary traditions from around the world.
I always like to stop at this place because to me, it's like the best example of what a real Jerusalem bakery is. Most bakeries make baked goods from one region, like a French bakery or a German bakery or a Hungarian bakery. This place here has stuff from all over. They have kada, which we're gonna try, which is Kurdish, okay? You have pita, that's general Middle Eastern, not from any one specific country. You have frena, which is a Moroccan kind of a pita. You have soft pretzels, which originate in Germany. You have burekas, which originate in Turkey. You have rugelach and babka from Eastern Europe. They're not a mix of all these cultures. Jerusalem is a mix of all these cultures. These foods represent Jerusalem just as much as croissant and macaron represent Paris. That's a real Jerusalem bakery.
And what they're making here is kare, essentially a Kurdish cheese-stuffed bread.
See, these are undone already, so they're making it now. So it's a soft bread dough. It's folded over, as you can see, and in between it, it has cheese that melts.
Now that, my friends, is some melty, stringy goodness. A seriously tough act to follow. Even more so when you've got halva on deck, something I've never really been nuts about. But Joel knows why.
Most halva in the world is 50% sugar and crappy sesame seeds. Okay? This is 15% sugar and high quality imported organic sesame seeds from Ethiopia, the best sesame seeds in the world. So instead of tasting like chalk in your mouth, it's smooth and creamy. This flavor here is lemon chocolate pecan.
Well, hell, consider me a convert, which I'm guessing isn't a phrase to use lightly around here. Onwards through the market, you get a sense for what Joel means when he says that the shuk is for all 5 senses. The colors and food are a feast for the eyes. The vendors shouting at the top of their lungs that their bananas are the best, the smells of it all, the textures of everything you can get your eager little paws on, and the flavors that follow with every subsequent bite. Though not every aspect of the market is quite as romantic.
The market was not built all at once. It was actually built in 7 different sections over about 15 years. I mean, the market had already been around, but it was just like random little shacks. When they started to build permanent buildings, it took them some time. This section over here that we're about to go into is the 3rd section built in 1931, and it's got a weird name. It's called the Savings and Loan Market. No joke. Shuk Halva'a V'Chisachon. That's a weird name for a food market. How did it get the name? Well, after the first 2 sections up that way were built, everybody down here that's still selling out of a dirty shack was at a disadvantage. Because why would you shop in a dirty shack? But they didn't have the money to build these gorgeous buildings that you see here. So they went to a bank and they said, hey, could you give us loans at lower interest rates so that we can make a living while we're paying you back? The bank said, no problem. You just have to name the shuk after us. This is Citi Field, or whichever other stadium is named for a bank, okay? Long before any stadium in America was named after anything, we did the naming rights thing here first in 1931.
Hey, I'd still rather hang at the shuk than Preparation H Arena or whatever. Anyways, moving on.
This here is called malawach. It's a Yemenite puff pastry dough. It's a Jewish dish. This dish is invented here. It's called mimulawach. That means stuffed malawach. It's a malawach with everything on it. Normally they wrap it up like a burrito, hence the stuffed. We get an open face so you guys can share. This here is schug. Schug is spicy, but also has good flavor to it. It's not just heat. There's a knife, dig in.
Don't mind if I do. And yes, I will take some schug while I'm at it. A question that's been on my mind is, are there any genuine Jerusalem foods? Dishes that were conceived and created entirely in Jerusalem?
So this place is called Ishtabach, first of all. That name is a pun because it sounds like a Jewish prayer, Yishtabach, which means he is praised. Ishtabach means cookman. So it's a little pun. And this dish, shamburak, pretty much you can only get here, okay? It was invented by a member of the local Jerusalemite Syrian Kurdish community. Kurdistan, of course, spans 4 pieces of 4 countries, so it's from Syrian Kurdistan, as a way of repurposing Shabbat leftovers, which obviously not in the restaurant leftovers, but that's what it was originally. And basically, you start with a flat disc of a really good bread dough. Sesame seeds and nigella seeds on it, very tasty. It gets crispy. It's not just like a soft bread dough, it's a crispy one. On top of that goes a layer of an awesome mashed potato. Then on top of that goes meat. That's where you get your choice. You've got about 10 different options or a vegetarian option. On top of that, a really nice flavorful vegetable topping. Then they twist the ends of the dough a little bit, so it's kind of like a khachapuri, you know, like the cheese breads from Georgia with the egg in the middle. It's like a boat. Put it into the oven for about 10 minutes. Comes out and it's crispy and filling and delicious, and also not very expensive. It's about 50 shekels each, give or take. And the name of the dish, shamburak, is also a play on words, because the same letters, in the same order but pronounced slightly differently, spell the Hebrew word shemevorach, that is blessed, because it's the food from Shabbat. So it's a really yummy, genuine Jerusalem food. Don't let anybody say there's no actual Jewish Israeli foods invented here. There are plenty, and that's just one of them.
And it's one I'm more than happy to bite into. Like, screw Chipotle. Can we get a shamburak on every block?
I want people to realize how diverse Jewish food is. And you see it like in the market where we just have foods from all over. Jewish food is an extremely diverse thing. And people are like, oh, well, there's no such thing as Jewish food. And I'm like, people place demands on Jewish food that they don't place on any other food. That they want it to be indigenous to the Jews, only Jews invented it, and only Jews eat it, and unique to us. Like, nobody makes those requirements on Italian food or French food or anything else. Why does that need to be there? And by the way, there are foods that are uniquely Jewish and originally Jewish in origin, but that doesn't matter. I don't think that's the only thing that determines if something is a Jewish food. There's a lot of things that determine. That's a long lecture we could go into, but the point is, though, that there are many foods that are clearly Jewish foods. I would give the simple example that many countries around the world, in their local dialects, have foods that they call Jewish X. So if whoever in the local dialect is saying it's Jewish, who are we to say it's not? Right? So there's a lot of Jewish foods. And I want people to understand how diverse Jewish food is because of how diverse the Jewish people are. And then when you notice that more or less it's all kosher, you realize how unified the Jewish people are within our diversity. That's what's really unique about the Jewish people, and you see it in the food. We're extremely diverse and yet extremely unified.
For all the stories you read overseas about Jerusalem, it was refreshing to see a normal day that would scare away any breaking news headline editor. Though just days earlier, a terrorist did run a car into pedestrians nearby, right around where we were walking actually. But it's not the norm, Joel explains.
Something that's important to me to show my tourists, and I very explicitly and blatantly do not believe in propaganda. I'm not going to lie to people and tell people that violence and tensions don't exist here. They do, and it's very unfortunate that they do, and we all hope that there will be an end to that very soon. But really, when those things happen, they are the exception. When we were in the market just now, we saw tons of people of all types, Jews and Arabs and Christians and everybody side by side. I'm not going to tell you we're the best of friends, but we get along, we coexist. I know their names, they know my names, my name, ask after their kids. I don't have any kids, so they don't ask after mine. But yeah, we get along, and that's the normal. When things happen, and they do, unfortunately, they're the exception, they're not the rule. But no one's going to write a newspaper article in America that says, today in Jerusalem, everybody got along again. But they should, because it's crazy how well we do get along.
I'm guessing some people watching might question that assessment. How does the Palestinian diaspora who can't return to Jerusalem feel about that, you might wonder. But at the same time, it feels wildly reductionist, not to mention insulting, to whittle Jewish, Palestinian, and Arab-Israeli life in Jerusalem, or any life for that matter, down exclusively to its worst days. That's not to say people aren't thinking about the conflict or talking about it. And we'll get more into that next time when we cross into the Palestinian territories through Checkpoint 300 for a stay at Banksy's walled-off hotel, and to learn more about this hunk of junk from the Palestinians living in the adjacent Aida refugee camp.